set, hut.
As the hills of West Virginia resound with the sounds of Golden Blue football.
Almost heaven, West Virginia.
Now let's bring on the Mountaineers. Goes around about the 15 to 10 to 5. A touchdown, West Virginia. He did it.
He did it. Patrick White. Touchdown, Tay Von Austin.
The Don Nehlen's Mountaineers enjoy walking in where angels feared to tread.
I think you think that these guys are going to fall over dead for you. Well, I got news for you. They're going to punch you right in the mouth. It's Mountaineer pride!
Nothing cheap, nothing dirty, but West Virginia football. West Virginia football.
We've no doubt tonight they shouldn't have played the old Golden Blue. Not this night!
They've done it. They've done it. A perfect season. And the Mountaineers, for the first time in history, undefeated and untied.
Don Nehlen and his Mountaineers, for the second time, have finished a regular season with an unblemished mark.
Ain't no stopping the Golden Blue.
It is a great night to be a Mountaineer wherever you may be.
What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Welcome into another live stream here on the Country Roads webcast channel, March 28th edition, as we continue to try and cover WVU football spring practice, providing updates following each press conference from Rich Rod and one of the assistants. This week, yesterday, we had Rich Rod himself, of course, and special teams coordinator Pat Kirkland. Got our first chance to hear from him, so jotted down some notes from both of those press conferences. That'll be what we'll get into in the main portion of this show, and then, of course, on the back end, we will talk a bit about Logan Bradley, who we previously reported, courtesy of Football Scoop, would be added to the West Virginia football staff for the upcoming season. That's announcement's now been made official from the university. We'll read through the press release and pull up the coaching staff tracker on the back half of this show, but that's what's kind of on the docket today. But appreciate you guys tuning in. If you're watching live on Facebook or Twitch, or on YouTube, if you are on that Facebook or Twitch, be sure to come over to the YouTube channel and subscribe here. That way you can get access to our pre-recorded videos, podcast episodes, stay up to date on all things Mountaineer sports as we bring you the coverage from fans for fans here in regards to WVU sports. Those of you watching on YouTube Live, throw any questions, comments you got there in the chat. I'll try and get to some of those throughout the stream, and if you're watching after the fact, you can help us out either way by hitting that thumbs up button. Really helps us a ton with that YouTube algorithm. Helps us find more Mountaineer football fans and Mountaineer basketball fans for that matter, as well, as there's going to be a lot of news coming out on that side of things here in the near future. Also, now that a basketball hire has been made, you got the roster rebuild, you got a staff, all of that good stuff. So I think the main takeaway from Rich Rod's press conference yesterday was the fact, and that's why you see it in the thumbnail, you see it on the title of the video. We knew that the 105-player roster limit was coming, but we didn't know how extensive the roster would change for West Virginia, heading into the fall as we conclude spring, move into the summer. That transfer portal window opens up once spring practice ends, and it sounds like it may be, a bit of an overhaul for West Virginia in a lot of positions. I've mentioned time and time again throughout the spring here, the one position that Rich Rod seems happy with is the quarterbacks and Jaheim White. Really hasn't, praised too many other positions other than that. And I think there's some details in this press conference that really hint at them adding, at a lot of those other positions here once that portal window opens following the conclusion of spring practice. So definitely roster changes are coming, and that's one big major takeaway. But with no further ado, let's get into, some notes from the press conferences, starting with Rich Rod's, and then we'll get into Pat Kirkland's a little bit. But some of my main takeaways here. Rich Rod really started the press conference by saying, I don't think we got better today, but we did a lot of work. And that's just what's been so refreshing to me is he's brutally honest about these things. I think he also uses it a bit as a motivational tactics for some of the players because he knows some of them probably watch it as well. And so, he said, I don't think we got better today. And he just straight up is honest with you. He doesn't give you any coach speak, which is 180-degree difference from the previous staff, which is nice to have that now, is to have this kind of open dialogue where it feels like he's actually telling us the truth about multiple things versus trying to sell us on something that's a strength, and then we come to find out once the season rolls around it's actually a weakness that they were just trying to sell us on. We're not getting that anymore. He's telling us whatever weaknesses there are, he's letting us know about them, which is a really welcomed addition. Said they did a lot of 2-minute drill during the end of practice yesterday, which usually, the first time you do that, he said it's ugly, and it was ugly at times during that 2-minute drill, but that's okay. That's okay. This is early. This is spring. You want to get those kinks worked out. It's okay if stuff looks ugly right now. You just got to hone in on it, continue to work at it. You have the summer, you have OTAs, you have fall camp to get those things right. So by the time the season rolls around in the fall, those things are much more crisp, and that's what they're trying to work on right now. He said the guys have been working hard, and there are a few practices left to try and teach more, but most importantly, they're going to be doing a lot of evaluation, and that goes hand in hand with what we've been talking about here throughout the spring. A lot of guys are going to have to be cut from this roster following the conclusion of spring practice to make room for all these positions that they want to add, which more on that in a bit, but also, they want to have the best 105 players on the roster that they feel like can help them, get wins, which is the main goal here, and this staff continues to drive that home as well. He was asked about the defense. He said, on the defense, he loves Coach Alley and his staff and the job that they're doing, but reiterated that most of the players on that defense haven't played as far as returning players to WVU. There's some transfers that have played at other places, but, as far as returners, you got Reed Carrico, Eddie V, who didn't play a lot last season because he was injured, and then, of course, KK Tarnu is back as well, but that's pretty much it. It's all new guys. Other than that, as we know, only 1 or 2 starters returning on the whole entire West Virginia football team. And, of course, when you're dealing with a lot of newcomers, guys that haven't played on that defense, there's a lot of unknowns that are tied into that, and that's currently what the case is. And so here's where we get to, one of the main things that I want to highlight here from Rich Rod's press conference. That's why it's, the title of the video. That's why it's in the thumbnail, is him addressing, the depth concerns, him addressing the roster concerns. And when you have a regime change to guys that really coach it differently and really want you to perform differently, there are some non-negotiables that maybe some of these players they feel like they currently have aren't meeting. And if they're not, they have the opportunity to, show them the door, so to speak, after spring football is over, and they're going to go out and get a lot of other players, as Rich Rod referenced here. He said, still concerned with the depth at multiple positions. And then he was asked, well, what positions do you feel like you need to go and get guys? And here are the positions he listed: offensive line and defensive line, wide receiver, another running back, linebackers, cornerback, and safety. So as you can hear, that's pretty much every position on the roster, save for quarterback. And he also mentioned long snapper was good. Added the kicker had been good, but today wasn't the best day, so probably may try and add another kicker as well for competition at that position. So you can see that's why I'm saying a roster overhaul is coming in a lot of ways, because Rich Rod spoke to as much, and it's not the first time he's mentioned that throughout the spring, going out and needing depths at these positions and going out and, replacing guys at a lot of these position groups as well. But you have the opportunity to do that with the transfer portal window coming after spring. Did reiterate that he likes the quarterbacks and the competition they have there. And as I said, long snapper has been good. So those are the couple positions that have received praise. He also has mentioned throughout the spring his, love and affinity for Jaheim White, who he thinks can be really great. So I guess, the silver lining is, hey, at least the signal callers, the quarterbacks, they've looked good throughout the spring. That's the one position that time and time again he has praised, while kind of, downplaying the job done at all the other positions and stating that they need to go out and get more guys. But roster overall certainly coming. When he was asked what they need to hit the portal for, and he says O-line, D-line, wide receivers, another running back, linebackers, cornerback, and safety. He was also then asked about scrimmaging another opponent as a spring game potentially in the future. As we know, Coach Prom's trying to get that worked out. Him and the Syracuse coach are trying to get that improved by the NCAA. I think if that happens and they end up scrimmaging in the spring, you'll see this become a norm across college football. Hopefully West Virginia goes to do that as well. And Rich Rod said he isn't opposed to scrimmaging another program for a spring game. But the only thing that he would still be wary of is something that we've talked about throughout the spring, kind of why West Virginia is doing a spring showcase this year versus a spring game, is because that portal window opening right after spring is over. If you've got a guy that goes out and shows out and you put him on tape, other programs are going to come tamper and try and get him away from you, and that's why he's still kind of wary of that. So he's saying, he would do the scrimmaging, but he would also, be more akin to it if the NCAA would change those transfer portal windows so you don't have one that comes immediately after, your spring is over, because then you're kind of leery of putting guys that you really want out there that you're really excited about and putting a lot of tape out on them because other programs are going to come try and lure them away. Asked about the defensive backs, said they played better today and that they have improved throughout the spring, but still have concerns there in terms of depth. So definitely sounds like defensive backs will be added to the roster. Kind of goes hand in hand with what we mentioned there earlier. And then I liked this quote. There's always a couple of quotes I try and throw in here. I threw a couple in this one. This is the first of those. He said some of these guys may not have been yelled at before. And I think that speaks volumes of, the previous staff, which we've talked about multiple times throughout these updates here throughout the spring, is such a different in the way that these guys approach things versus the way the previous staff did. I don't know if coddling is the right word, but you kind of got to go that way with it when you think of how the previous staff did things. And I think the latter quote here towards the end will hammer that home even further. And he said the Jax State guys are more used to it, and so they're probably helping the guys that were returners on the roster, letting them know, what Rich Rod expects of them, what this staff demands of them, and, doing a little bit more yelling, which I think is good because I think that we could use a little bit more of that, a little bit less cookouts, less team bonding events, and a little bit more hard edge, right? We're all, I think, ready for that. He said things they got to work on and get better at that are non-negotiable, of course, and that is playing hard and playing tough. And then this is where you get my favorite quote, not only of this press conference, but one of my favorite quotes I've heard him give throughout the entire spring, and I was able to, kept pausing the press conference so that I would get the exact quote, because this speaks volumes and goes hand in hand with what I just spoke about, the difference between this staff and the previous staff. He says, I don't want one person to buy a season ticket to a Mountaineer game and have to sit in those stands and watch somebody be soft or somebody be lazy. Not one fan, because they can see it if you're doing that. He said, if you're soft and if you're lazy, you need to change it. And he said, if you're not going to change it and you're going to be soft and lazy, you won't play for the Mountaineers. And I think the way that he said, they can see if you're doing that, if you're being soft and lazy. I think we certainly can recognize it because we've seen it for the past 6 years a lot of times from those players. And obviously, the way that he continues to hammer it home, he sees it as well, and he's not going to allow it. That's why the non-negotiables are playing hard and playing tough. And just to hammer that quote home one more time, because I think it deserves read again, because I think fans are going to love this, and this is what we need here at WVU. I don't want one person to buy a season ticket to a Mountaineer game and have to sit in those stands and watch somebody be soft or somebody be lazy. Not one fan, because they can see it if you're doing that. Man, that one got me fired up hearing that quote for sure. So those are kind of my notes from Rich Rod's press conference. As you ended with the mic drop there, that was my favorite quote, not only from this press conference, but from throughout the time of the spring. And then let's talk a little bit about Pat Kirkland's press conference, the special teams coordinator. I highlighted some notes here from things that he said as well, providing some updates on the special teams and other aspects as well. Then I will catch up on some of your all's comments that are in here live, and then we will get to the staff update here on the back half of the show. But special teams coordinator Pat Kirkland, when he met with the media yesterday, stated that he's working mainly on improving the technique aspect on special teams right now, making sure they have all, the fundamentals, the techniques down before they start, honing in on the intricacies of the scheme and such, which they'll do more of that over the summer and into fall camp. Said a big part of his responsibility this spring, he feels like, is evaluating the personnel that they have on the roster to determine who can be on coverage teams and do a good job there, which makes sense, obviously. And Rich Rod stated throughout the spring that something that he likes, which is, a bit different than, the way some other coaches do it, is he doesn't necessarily want to have, his best players on special teams. He likes to have those second and third teams guys as starters on special teams, because he feels like if those guys are that's the only unit that they're starting on, but that's where they are starters and consider themselves starters there is on those special teams units, then they're going to go all out, and it's really going to mean a lot to them if that's kind of the only playing time that they're getting is there on special teams. Pat Kirkland said he felt like his previous head coaching experience helps him be able to juggle and manage all 6 of the different special teams units that, of course, he has to watch over, those being field goal block, punt return, kickoffs, and kickoff returns. He said the mental aspect and being able to adjust on the fly is just as important for the guys on special teams as having the speed to run downfield. So he said, yeah, you want to go out, you want to get the guys that have good speed, good athleticism to, shed a block or whatever you need to do depending on what special teams unit you're on. But really, he said that mental aspect plays as big of a role in that as anything, because you have to be able to recognize what you're seeing there on the field, adjust on the fly sometimes when in regards to the special teams units. He expects the special teams units this year to be aggressive. And then he said, of course, winning the field position battle is very important, which, kind of goes without saying. But the example that he gave is even a punt returner, fair catching a ball versus letting it bounce and roll, 15 yards. That's hidden yardage. That's going to go a long way in helping them get wins, which, yet again, that's what everyone on this staff that we've had, updates from throughout the spring has echoed. Of course, the hard edge mentality, the toughness that they're trying to instill, the non-negotiables where you're not going to be allowed to be soft and lazy. But overall, the main thing is they've all talked about winning. Winning is the main goal, and it's so nice to hear that again, just referenced, is winning. That's what it's all about. Everything's focused on what can we do to make us win. Every decision that they make. And the quote I have from Pat Kirkland in reference to that is, yes, he's the special teams coordinator. Yes, they have things they want to do well on special teams. But he states the number one goal is not to lead the Big 12 in return yards, not to lead the Big 12 in blocked kicks, but to lead the Big 12 in number of wins. And however the special teams units can help that, that's the main goal, is to get the most number of wins possible. And I love that winning is the main focus of this coaching staff now yet again. So those are the notes I had and the updates from yesterday's press conference from Rich Rod and, of course, special teams coordinator Pat Kirkland, who has a lot of West Virginia ties, previously being the head coach at the University of Charleston. This is his second time on staff back here at WVU as well, so it was nice to hear from him. And I thought Rich Rod really gave us some nice tidbits in his press conference in regards to, obviously, what he said about playing hard, playing tough as he continues to hammer that home. But I think the roster piece is what we really need to hone in on, because everyone needs to be prepared. And if you're not subscribed here to the Country Roads webcast, no better time than now, because once spring is over and that transfer portal opens up, we're going to have constant updates here on the players that are off the roster, transferring out, the players that are coming into the roster. We always do transfer portal updates and roster updates here to try and keep you guys up to date, because I think that's very important in today's day and age, because with so much roster turnover, it can come around to the first game in the fall, and you cannot know who any of the players are on the roster if you haven't been following it closely. So we always try to keep you up to date on that, so you're going to know when we come around to that first game against old Bobby Moe, Robert Morris, in September there, or is it the end of August this year? I think it might be August 31st this year. I can't remember. But nonetheless, when that comes around here in the start of the 2025 season, the Rich Rod 2.0 era, if you've been tuned in here to us on the CRW, you're going to know the players on the roster, and you're going to know, the jersey numbers. You're going to know all that good stuff, because we're going to keep you up to date on it throughout this process as they continue to overhaul this roster following spring football, which definitely seems like it's coming. So appreciate you guys that are tuned in here live, whether you're on Facebook or Twitch or YouTube. If you're on Facebook or Twitch, be sure to come over to the YouTube and subscribe so you can get those pre-recorded roster updates, those podcast episodes, stay up to date on that roster overhaul, and, of course, all other things going on throughout the Mountaineer sports world. I'm going to catch up on some of y'all's comments that are in there in the live chat, but if you're not watching live, you can throw them in the comments, and I'll try and respond after the fact. But whether you're watching live or on that playback, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. Help us out with that YouTube algorithm. Take a swig of my coffee here, and then I'll get to some of y'all's comments before we get to the official update of the staff edition, which we reported on a couple of days ago, but now we have the official press release, and we can pull up the staff tracker here on the CRW. Hey, what's going on, Tommy Stoll? Good to see you in here, man. Let's go Mountaineers. That's right. Earth Ether finally caught it live. Hey, glad to see you popping in here for a live one, man. I always see you in the comments and stuff on the videos. Regardless, but glad to see you in here, getting a chance to watch one live as well. Steve Davis, good to see you, man, as well, man. I don't think I've seen you in here before. Be sure you're subscribed if you haven't already. Things need to settle down a bit, and we have time to put together both teams. Well said. Plenty of time to put together, both teams here. West Virginia already has a, completely new roster for the most part, just from the first transfer portal window. I think we already have 59 new players. That number is going to increase, but the positive side of that is that Rich Rod had to deal with this at Jack State. When you're at a program like that, a non-Power 4 program, your roster gets picked off a lot. Last year he had 60-some new players at Jack State, still managed to go win a conference championship. So him and this staff that he's brought in together are well-versed in doing this, and I think they're going to do everything they can to make sure West Virginia has the best 105 players on this roster for this upcoming season so they can go out and win ball games and compete in the Big 12, and plenty of time for that. That's right, Steve. Tosh Miller says, Rich Rod is very blunt. No filter, no filler. Yeah, and it's nice, isn't it? It's a pleasant and welcomed change and addition, as opposed to some of the previous staffs that we've had over the past few years that would kind of just tell you what you want to hear, butter you up, stuff like that. A lot of coach speak. You're not getting any coach speak with Rich Rod. He's going to tell you how it is, and that really helps a lot when you're trying to cover the team because you actually know what's going on and what to expect versus kind of being sold a bill of false goods and getting hit with the old bait and switch, right? Definitely that's been a great welcomed addition with these Rich Rod updates throughout the spring. Tosh says hit that like button. Appreciate that, Tosh. Yeah, if you guys would, if you're in here live, exit out of the chat for a second, hit the thumbs up button. Helps us a ton, and you can do that if you're watching after the fact on the playback as well. Drumwolf62 says nothing beats the old school way of doing things. Today's young men need strong role models. We don't see that anymore in today's society. It's considered toxic, but it is needed. Yeah, when you have that old school style coach like Rich Rod, and that's one thing he's hammered home as well, is he believes, good players that want to be great, they still want to be coached hard. And, if you're someone that doesn't want to be great, doesn't want to be coached hard, there's plenty of other programs around the country for you. But if you're here, you're a Mountaineer under this staff, you're going to be coached hard, and it's going to be, that hard edge mentality that's going to be instilled in you. You're not going to be allowed to be soft and lazy. There's not going to be any lackadaisical play going on Saturdays here, or else you just won't play, which is nice. It's nice. Drumwolf says it's going to be exciting for football and basketball seasons in the near future. Yeah, that's a good point as well. Ross Hodge coming in on the basketball side, which Rich Rod did mention towards the tail end of his press conference that he's excited to meet him and let him know kind of the culture here within the state, but he said he feels like Ross Hodge already knows about that and certainly fits in with that. If you look at Ross Hodge's teams on the basketball side, the way that they play, defensive-minded, blue-collar, tough, gritty, certainly going to fit in well in West Virginia. It's going to be nice to have both the football and basketball teams with that mentality that really goes hand in hand and fits well with the culture of our state and the culture of our people here in West Virginia. Definitely going to like that as well. Eric Flowers, good to see you as well, brother. He said, I'm excited for both football and basketball. Me too, man. Football season can't get here soon enough, and then, of course, once it starts, it's like you get rolling in it, then basketball kind of sneaks up on you, and you have that period where both sports are going on simultaneously, and it's going to be interesting because both of those sports are going to have, a new coach at the helm. So it's going to be fun to, get to see the first year for both Rich Rod and Ross Hodge, which those two names go good together too, don't they? I'm excited for both sports as well, for sure. Drumwolf says, have a great weekend, WVU fans. Let's go and hit that like button. Appreciate that, Drumwolf. Always appreciate you, man, for sure. He says, Ren Baker delivered once again. Ren Baker continues to really impressed me as an athletic director, what the hires that he makes, what the job that he does here. I think, some people haven't been sold yet on Ross Hodge, but once the basketball season rolls around, they get to know him a little bit. They see the way that his teams play, the mentality that he, puts into his basketball teams. I think they're going to like him as well. And Ren Baker did deliver yet again, in my opinion, too, Drumwolf. I agree with you there. Linda said, is Gallagher getting any reps as a punt returner? Sounds like he is. He didn't... Pat Kirkland didn't specify, but he was asked about Rodney Gallagher, and he said he does have, great ball skills, the ability to be a great return man. Mentioned they have about 5 to 7 guys working out at that return man position. And, of course, at the end of the day, he said Rich Rod's going to be the one that makes the call of who's the ultimate guy that's back there. But also one thing that we do know is throughout the spring, they haven't been going live on returns. That's something that they're going to save for the summer and through fall camp. They've been working on catching them. They've got plenty of guys that can at least catch them. We know that for sure. So that's at least one positive, but we'll find out, I think, once we get into fall camp, who's going to be the actual return man when they go live with those return situations throughout the summer and into fall camp. I think Gallagher's got a good chance to be one, but you guys know Dom Collins is the one that I'm keeping an eye on, that I would love to see end up as the return man with his great speed and his great ability there that he's shown, as a return man throughout his high school career. And, that 4.2 40-yard dash speed would be awesome as a returner. So I got my fingers crossed that he's going to be in the mix there. But I think it's a good problem to have that WVU has plenty of guys that I think could end up being the return man. And as Drumwolf says here, let's not forget Preston Fox came back onto the roster now after previously deciding to retire, and he has great experience as a punt returner, so he's certainly going to be in the mix there for the punt return position as well. Why Clever, good to see you in here, man. I don't think I've seen you in here before. Appreciate you hopping in. Hope you subscribe here to stay up to date on more of these updates. What position do you think will have the most, I'm guessing you mean cuts for the 105 limit? Good question there. I think that, judging by what Rich Rod has said, it's going to be multiple positions across the roster. But I think, unfortunately, what you're going to see cut the most after the spring is over is all those guys that were, previously walk-ons. They're just not going to have a spot anymore, unfortunately. So sadly, that probably means, the Judah Prices, the Clay Ashes, the Scott Keens, all of those guys that are, further down the depth chart, that are guys that would help you on scout team and things like that throughout the season. Those guys are going to have to probably find a new home. Not saying all those guys that I just named are going to be there, but I think a lot of those guys that were previous walk-ons on the roster will probably have to find, a spot elsewhere, because now you have 105 roster limit, and you're going to need to go out and get a lot of players to help with depth at each of these positions. So unfortunately, and that's one thing Rich Rod's lamented as well, is it kind of seems like the NCAA is trying to get rid of the walk-on thing, unfortunately, right now. And that got those guys that previously would begin their career as walk-ons and then end up starters 3 or 4 years down the road and have good careers at WVU are probably going to be going by the wayside now because of these new roster limits and these new rules that are being implemented by the NCAA for sure. Shaggy said, I'm excited for the new hoops coach, but very concerned about the football program under Rich Rod. Wow. That's surprising, Shaggy, to me, because, I was all in on Rich Rod from the beginning. He was my favorite, and I think that this is a new era, and we're going to be back to glory finally. I'm so excited to be rid of the soft air raid tree style coaches and to get back to someone who understands West Virginia football, what we need here to be successful, and has been very successful here before, and I think he's going to be again. And I hope that once the season comes around, then he gets you right on board as we win a bunch of games this upcoming season, because I truly believe that we're going to. But hey, you're entitled to that opinion, Shaggy. I get it, man. But I definitely am not concerned about the football side. I'm excited for both new coaches, but if I had more concern for one than the other, it would be basketball, just because, it's Ross Hodges' first time here at WVU. He hasn't had the, proof in the pudding, so to speak, like Rich Rod has. I'm a huge Rich Rod fan, though, always have been, once I got over, kind of my sore feelings a few years after, 07. But, still always followed him and think he's done an awesome job, especially at Jack State. What he did was incredible last year. One of the best offenses in college football, despite being at a smaller school that didn't have a lot of success. And, a quarterback that ran for 1,200 yards, a running back that ran for 1,600 yards and was the number 3 rusher in the country. I'm super excited to have that back at WVU, especially. It's going to be so fun to watch an up-tempo offense again and not have to watch that boring style that we've watched for the past 6 years. Now we're going to be going fast. We're going to be going up-tempo. And, even if it takes some time for us to get adjusted, it's definitely not going to be not entertaining, right? It's going to be super entertaining for sure. But hopefully some of those concerns are alleviated once the fall comes around, Shaggy. But I appreciate you as always, man. Linda Skidmore said, I hope Jacoby Spells, Darrell Williams, and TJ Johnson have big seasons. Yeah, all those guys, that were previously, high regarded, and now hopefully it seems like maybe their time's coming around, and those are 3 to consider there that will probably have bigger roles this season, or at least are going to have the opportunity to increase their roles depending on how they're performing throughout the spring and into the fall. We'll see what type of roles they earn, but definitely 3 players that could take a step up this season. We'll see what happens. Silas says, sounded like Rich Rod was not happy about practice yesterday. He's looking for all positions but QB and long snapper. Good news on the QBs, though. Yeah, that's the thing that I highlighted a lot throughout here is the roster overhaul is on the way. And, it's not only this press conference, but throughout the spring, he's kind of talked about that with quarterback being the only position he's really constantly praised, Jaheim White being someone that he's constantly praised. And other than that, he's been talking about needing depth and needing new bodies at pretty much all the other positions for sure. Damon Tillman, appreciate you as well. He says it's going to take 2 to 3 years to be where we want to be in basketball and football. I'll say this because we now have 2 good coaches, but we need to give them the time, not get upset if year 1 isn't magical. Good point. I think that, today's day and age, it's easier to do it in 1 year, but I obviously do need to give them a little bit of grace as well. But I would not be surprised to see both of them have successful first years either, especially, with Rich Rod on the football side here, as we're talking about. He has experience with these roster overhauls, doing it just last year, 60 new players at Jack State, and still managed to win a conference championship and have a great season. So I think that he could surprise some people in year 1, but by year 2, year 3, then that's when you're really going to be rolling and cooking with gas, I think, for sure as well, Damon. Raven Grady, good to see you as well. Pitt is a must-win for football. If Rich has to throw pads on or put the OGs on the field, Pat, Slayton, all those guys, you know they will be there. Hey, he's going to do whatever he has. I'm sure that one's marked on his calendar there for sure, and I think that that's one game that I'm expecting us to go out and play really hard in. I mean, we're going to play hard in every game now under Rich Rod, but that one's just going to mean a little bit more, and it better be a night game too. That's what I got my fingers crossed for, and it is indeed a must-win, and I expect them to go out there and put their best foot forward, and hopefully it comes out a positive one for the good guys, and eat shit Pitt as always, right? Fox does have reliable hands. Tosh Miller, good point. He's going to have a role on this team, whether on special teams or in the receiver room. Adding him back to the roster was a good addition, especially as Rich Rod has continued to say they need more depth at the receiver position for sure. In Rich we trust. That's right, Drum Wolf. That's right. Nathan Scott, good to see you in here, channel member. He says, not to get off track, but I'm seeing West Virginia's already hitting the portal in basketball. Saw that as well. We've reached out to a couple of prospects already, so it seems like Ross Hodge, despite being loyal and finishing out his time there in the NIT with North Texas, is already working and juggling between both things there as West Virginia is trying to build a staff and going to have to rebuild an entire roster, and they were already reaching out to players in the portal, which is nice to see. Nice to see that this thing's going to get rolling on that side soon enough, and we'll have updates as they come through on the basketball side as well with the staff build and the roster build there also. Tosh Miller says, listen to Rich Rod talk. Sounds like the football team is awful, so I understand the worry. I mean, yeah, that is a good point as well with how much he's lamented a lot of the positions, throughout the spring. It is, reasonable to have that kind of stance. But I also think that one thing Rich Rod is he's a super master motivator. And, some of that is a little bit of, you got to read between the lines of him trying to motivate certain players probably to, be better than what they are. He's always trying to raise that level of competition and always trying to get the best out of his guys, both staff and players wise. So, that's also, I think, going on as well. But yeah, definitely there are some concerns on the roster, but I think they're going to address them in the portal as well. And I think we'll be excited with where this roster ends up once fall comes around. Let's see. I like that, Raven. She said, just wait, guys. I have an 8, almost 9-year-old son. I can get us a good lineman or safety in about 10 years. Hey, we'll be waiting on it, Raven. We'll be waiting on it. We'll welcome them with open arms here to the Mountaineer football program for sure. That's awesome. I like that. Mike Morton says, particular issue of people wanting to sit back and wait. First isn't the year to hold back. Give it 1 or 2 years to see if the coach is for real. Isn't non-support a formula for failure? Couldn't agree more. You got to get behind them, from the beginning. I believe what you're referencing there is the rumors of, the donors, some of them being disappointed. But I think, one thing that I've heard about that, yes, some donors were disappointed in the basketball hire because they were, pushing for somebody else. But also, it's a bit of a mixed bag. It's not a majority that was upset. It's definitely more 50-50 or maybe even, 70 liked it and 30% didn't. And I think that those guys are going to get on board once they learn more about Ross Hodge, once they meet him. I think those donors will still have that backing there for the Mountaineer basketball program. And as you said there, if they want WVU to be successful, if they don't support, then it's going to be harder to be successful. So I think that they'll see that as well. And they'll get rid of the sour grapes in due time for sure. Hey, what's going on, Mountaineer with Kenny? Good to see you. Good to see you in here. Always appreciate you as well. Channel member Nathan Scott said, we're not playing for Neil Breezy anymore. Hey, that's right. Complete flip in the mentality of this team, of this program, complete 180, and you can see that even in the way these press conferences are conducted, which I've had a lot of fun covering here throughout the spring. But appreciate you guys tuning in here, despite it being an early day stream. I got to jet off to work here in a bit, so that's why I'm coming at you with one early today versus one later in the day. But wanted to get in here and talk about some of this. So that's what I had from the updates there from the press conferences. But let's talk a little bit more about Logan Bradley for some people that may have not seen the stream a couple of days ago when the reports first came out of him being the new inside receivers coach, courtesy of Football Scoop. We now have the official announcement from the university. So let's pull up the press release and talk a bit about the new inside receivers coach at WVU. Coming over from the SEC, we have Logan Bradley joining the staff, as we see here from the university's official page. West Virginia football coach Rich Rodriguez has announced that Logan Bradley has been hired as the inside receivers coach on the Mountaineer coaching staff. We get the quote here from Rich Rod. I have known of Logan for several years from my time at Ole Miss. He was at Ole Miss before I got there and worked with the recruiting staff, and everyone there always spoke highly of him, which that's the one thing Rich Rod said they were going to target with this hire, was someone that's a dynamic recruiter, and he has stated that he thinks Logan Bradley will be not a good recruiter, but a great recruiter. He goes on to say, some coaches on my staff that worked with him before have been talking to me about him for a couple of years. So I wanted a guy who had obviously coached similar positions at some point, but also it was very important that he could be a dynamic recruiter for us, and that's what I think Logan is. Bradley arrives from Auburn, where he was the assistant tight ends coach last year and an offensive analyst the 2 years prior to that. He managed the organization of practice scripts and game day call sheets for the head coach and created the offensive playbook using Visio electronic software. He was responsible for setting up and managing drills, handled opponent film breakdown, and assisted in recruiting on the offense. Before Auburn, he was an offensive analyst and an offensive grad assistant at Liberty, and then a recruiting analyst at Ole Miss, as Rich Rod talked about there. Volunteer with the Dolphins back in 2018, so even some experience at the NFL level. And before that, he was a student assistant with the wide receivers and the secondary at Ole Miss early in his career. During his career, he was a part of coaching staff that participated in 7 postseason bowl games. He's a native of Cedar Hill, Texas. He earned his bachelor's degree in general studies with concentrations in sports rec, education, and history from Ole Miss in 2018, and has a master's degree in sports administration from Liberty in 2021. So not only do I think he's someone that'll do a good job coaching those inside receivers as he fills the void left by Blaine Stewart, who went off to the NFL to join the Tampa Bay Bucs staff, but it's also another dynamic recruiter added to the staff that's full of great recruiters now, in my opinion. And in regards to that, let's pull up the staff now that we can add Logan Bradley's name officially. Here is the staff tracker that we have been utilizing here on the Country Roads webcast. I won't read through the entire staff, but you can see here Logan Bradley now added as inside receivers coach there, joining all these other names that are on the offensive staff, and what is a very diverse coaching staff and a very large coaching staff here in Rich Rod's return to WVU, as you now have, no limits on to as many members as you can have on the staff, and they've certainly taken advantage of that, using kind of an NFL model to build this staff with a lot of, assistant coaches, a lot of analysts, a lot of special assistants to the head coach, all kinds of different titles there, as you see on the offense, and where you see familiar names even like Noel Devine, Ryan Nealon, and Pat White. Logan Bradley joins that group, which I think is a very nice staff. I think that this arguably may be the greatest staff in WVU football history. It certainly has more money behind it than any other staff, has a lot of good ties, a great mix of veteran coaches, young up-and-comers in the profession, and a whole lot of great recruiters. And I think that the money they were able to put to this staff is a reason why you were able to get guys that have been coordinators in the past to come in and be senior assistants like Travis Trickett on the offensive side. And then if you scroll down here to the defensive side, Andrew Warwick, who's assistant linebackers coach and senior defensive assistant, he was a defensive coordinator just recently the past, few years, and had great success there as well. So that's, the money that's involved is the reason why you're able to lure some guys away from even previous coordinator roles to come have, different assistant roles here on both sides of the staff. There's a look at the defense and special teams there, as we talked a bit about Pat Kirkland here in this update. And of course, then you have still the front office staff, which is very large. This isn't even the full, support / front office staff. If I was to list that, it would take up multiple pages, but that's just some of the main ones there. If you guys haven't known about the staff yet, we've been trying to keep you guys updated on that. But, I won't read through them all. But if you want to take the time and look at all the names on each of those position groups, you can pause the video and read through each one there. The support side, the defensive side, and then, of course, the offensive side, now that we have the addition of Logan Bradley as the inside receivers coach. And now I think we can finally say the coaching staff is solidified for the upcoming season. Thought we had it solidified a couple of times. We had to replace the running backs coach, bring in Larry Porter, who was a phenomenal addition, and then replace the inside receivers coach here. But I think now we have a solid coaching staff, and this is the finalized staff for 2025. Barring any other unforeseen circumstances or surprises, I think that that's what we're looking at for the upcoming season there in Rich Rod 2.0 era, as I like to call it here, coming up in 2025. But that's all I had, guys, wanted to update you on the press conferences from, special teams coordinator Pat Kirkland and, of course, Rich Rods, as he shared some really good tidbits, especially involving the upcoming roster overhaul that we need to keep an eye on once spring ends here in just a little over a week now. We're a week and a day, the day that I'm streaming this, from the spring showcase, which will conclude spring practice, and the portal opens up not long thereafter. I think it's a week later. That gives them time after spring ends to have a week of meetings, one-on-ones with all of the players on the roster and try and let them know where they stand, if they're going to remain on the roster, if they're going to need to hit the portal and find other destinations. But of course, once spring ends and those movements start to happen, we'll keep you up to date on the roster overhaul that is to come following spring football. But let me catch up on some of y'all's comments, then we'll call it a stream because I do have to jet off to work here in a few, unfortunately. But I do appreciate the great turnout here for this live stream, especially with it being a morning stream here. Mike Morton said we need all hands on deck to help support. Indeed, for sure. It's definitely a major thing that we need. I think on the football side, we certainly have that. That was one of the big, key cogs, and Rich Rod being the choice was the money that was going to come along with that, and we've seen that with this amazing staff they've built. We've seen that with the transfers that they were able to go and snag, one of the best corners in the country in Michael Coates, one of the best pass rushers in the country in Jamori Robinson, one of the best receivers in the portal, in my opinion, in Cam Vaughn. You can go on down the list, and I think we'll see that again once the next portal window opens, and so hopefully that support is there on the basketball side as well once that rolls around. Channel member WV Wildman 82, good to see you as well, and always appreciate you. Says you can't take what Coach Rod says as all bad. This man keeps everything close to the vest. I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's more likely not as bad as he makes it seem. Yeah, there's a little bit of a motivational tactic in there as well. He does, not give you too much coach speak. He'll tell you it like it is, but also you got to read between the lines a little bit on some of the things he says because he does throw some jokes in there and things like that. And also, I think sometimes he's trying to motivate some of these players on the roster to say, hey, if you're not doing better, you got like another week before spring ends. I'm going to go out and I'm going to get players at all these positions if you don't step up your game. It's kind of what he's saying there if you read between the lines as well, which is a great point. WV Wildman 82. Off topic, but has anyone heard any more about Huggs being in the running for the McNeese job? I hope he gets it and does well. Actually, McNeese went another direction. I can't remember who it was they hired, but he didn't get that one. But it is interesting because the Villanova job is still open, and apparently his name was popping up a little bit for it as well. We'll see if Huggins is able to get back in the coaching profession at some point and have a better end to his career, but unfortunately won't be at McNeese as he was up for that, but they went another direction. But we'll see what happens with that. Appreciate the question as always, Shaggy. W. Wildman 82 said, I'm excited for football season. I'm still saying we win 8, maybe including the bowl. Either way, I'll take 8 wins in year 1. As would I. I think this schedule sets up pretty nicely as well. When it first came out, I went over it and gave a way too early prediction and said, I could see 8 wins on that schedule potentially. So depending on how everything shakes out, of course, we'll give our official predictions once August rolls around and we kick off the new season of the podcast, which will be our 8th season, I believe, which is crazy. We've been going at it since 2018 on the podcast side of things. We always kick off the season with our season prediction roundtable, and by that time we'll know the roster, we'll know what the pieces are of not only West Virginia's roster, but the other teams that are on the schedule and be able to give a more solid prediction. But I think West Virginia's got a chance to have a good year 1 under Rich Rod as well. W. Wildman 82. I really do. Let's see. Raven says, can't wait to see what Zach Alley does with our defense. Yeah, that's going to be one of the most fun aspects of this upcoming season is having a really great defensive coordinator for the first time in a long time that's going to be multiple, that's going to do a lot of different things, that's going to keep opposing offenses off balance from game to game. But not only that, from series to series, play to play, he mixes up what he does so much that it's really hard for anyone to get a beat on what he's doing. And he's such a smart individual. You can go on and on with praise about Zach Alley. So I'm excited to see what our defense looks like for the upcoming season as well. And to kind of piggyback off of that comment there, Raven, after the spring concludes, that's when we're going to start our summer series here for channel members where we do game rewatches. Last year, of course, we went back through the previous WVU football season and rewatched all the games. We're not going to do that for this season because it would kind of be pointless with a whole new staff, whole new roster. But what we are going to do is we're going to go back, we're going to rewatch the Jack State offense from last season so we can kind of scout what West Virginia's offense could look like for this upcoming season as Rich Rod's offense has changed a little bit. And then, of course, we're going to go back and watch Oklahoma's defense some last season as well. So that's what's in store for channel members throughout our summer series here. So if you're not an Almost Heaven level member of the channel, maybe consider it if you want to get a nice scout on what the offense and defense could look like before the fall rolls around. That's what we're going to be doing over the latter portion of spring and into the summer here on the channel for our Almost Heaven members, which we always appreciate you guys. And if you want to join that, you can hit the join button in the video description or the join button at the YouTube channel homepage. Helps keep this mic recording and that camera rolling, and you get all kinds of WVU sports bonus content, including behind-the-scenes stuff, those game rewatch series that I'm talking about. Then once the season rolls around, you'll get film reviews, player grades, videos, snap counts, injury reports, depth chart updates, and all kinds of member hangout streams as well. But I always appreciate you guys. But you mentioned Zach Alley made me think about that as well. Let's see. W Wildman 82 says if he can get our defense in the top 50, we'll win a lot of games. I have a lot of faith in this coaching staff. Yeah, that's what really excited me about this staff, and the fact that we were able to land Zach Alley, which was, the highest paid assistant coach West Virginia's ever had, and, one of the best hires I think we've ever had as an assistant as well. Because of that, we were able to steal him away from the SEC there in Oklahoma. But one thing that we know about Rich Rod is the offense is going to perform. His offense has performed every stop he's been throughout his career since, the beginning. And so we know the offense will be good. We're going to probably score 30, 35, maybe even close to 40 points per game. But if we can get the defense improved, because we know that's been the issue over the past two coaching staff that has really held us back. If you accompany at least halfway decent defense with Rich Rod's offense, you're going to be a really good team that can win a lot of games. So that's why it's super exciting. And as W. Wildman says, if he can get our defense up in the top 50, we're going to be cooking with gas. It's going to be a lot of fun for sure. Yeah, good point as well. Don't forget to pull for Hodge in the NIT. Coming up on Tuesday, I think they play. If they win that, they're in the NIT championship game. So you can go watch the new WVU basketball coach and watch that defense play, which, man, that defense plays hard, and one of the best defenses in the country over the past 5 years. Literally, I think the number 2 scoring defense in the country over the past 5 years. So for sure. Raven Grady says, we got to get a good safety for the backfield. We got creamed with long passes last season. Indeed. And I think that the good side of that is they went out and got a ton of defensive backs. Sounds like they're going to get more. I like the safeties that we've brought in. I've heard good things about Justin Harrington's performance throughout the spring as well. I think he's going to be a good safety for us, and we've got a lot of guys to choose from there in that defensive backfield, and it sounds like we're going to have more coming in once the next portal window opens as well. But appreciate all you guys with your questions and comments there in the chat. All called up now, so we'll get set to call it a stream. And, of course, I'll be back to chat with you guys in the near future. We will talk more about the football side of things after the next practice. And, of course, we'll do kind of a spring game preview or something before the spring showcase next weekend, which hopefully you guys are heading up. If so, maybe get a chance to do a meetup or something. Steven and I will both be there. And we're going to go to the baseball game after the spring game as well. They play at 4 that day. So going to be a fun day of Mountaineer action next Saturday on April 5th with the spring showcase, our first chance to look at this Rich Rod club, but then also, go over watch the baseball team as well, as they're having a great season. So a lot of stuff to report on, not only here on the football side, but of course on the basketball side as well. We'll have a ton to cover with the staff build and the roster rebuild there as well. We'll be covering all of it here on the CRW. So if you're on Facebook or Twitch watching live, come over to the YouTube channel and subscribe so you can stay up to date on all those happenings throughout the Mountaineer sports off season as we lead into a new year for both basketball and football with new guys at the helm of both sports. And it should be a fun lead up and fun seasons for both, I do believe, in my opinion. Appreciate everyone that tuned in live, whether you watch live or on the playback on YouTube. Hit the thumbs up button before you head out. Help us with that algorithm. Help us find more Mountaineer fans like yourself. If you didn't get a chance to throw any comments in the live chat, throw some in the comments there after the fact. Always appreciate those interactions as we continue to try and grow the CRW community throughout Mountaineer Nation. Having said that, hope everyone has a great Friday and has a great weekend. I'm sure I'll talk to you guys here in short order in the near future. Appreciate you guys tuning into this one. As always, I'm Jordan Cruz, and until next time, let's go Mountaineers.